Hello and welcome back to day 3 of the Hour of Devastation set review here on Gathering Information.
Hey.
Here we are to talk about just the instant speed effects. If you have time to check out our full set review, we've already posted that in 2 parts, the creature spells and then the non-creature spells. But if you only have so much time before your pre-release, then the most important things for you to know is what could be in your opponent's hand.
Yeah, those combat tricks that can mess up your plan so badly.
So these are the things that will affect you when you have things on the stack or in the middle of combat or who knows what's happening. And this is all you need to worry about, excepting, of course, whatever they pulled from Amonkhet. So if you want to go and watch our Amonkhet instant speed effects review or refresher, you can go and do that. There may be a card for it somewhere. I don't know if we can do that anymore. But either way, we will probably put this in a playlist with the other ones. So yeah, you can find it there. This is, of course, also going to be available. Is this going to be available on
iTunes? Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Yes? Going to put it on iTunes?
It's they're uploaded onto our regular thing, which uploads directly to iTunes. So if you follow the knowledge pool, you can find these in podcast form.
Awesome. Yeah, so even if you watch this video, you don't want to sit in front of a screen and watch a whole set review, you can find the audio to listen to while you're on the go. But before we get into the instance, there are a couple of things that I wanted to cover. Exert is now not just a combat effect, so don't forget that some of your opponent's creatures might be able to exert at instant speed for value. This is cards such as Steward of Solidarity. It's a 1 and a white for a 2/2, so it's a bear, but it has the ability tap and exert it to create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. This, as far as I could tell, or as far as I remember, is the only instant speed token maker in the entire set.
Yeah, other than the things that eternalize or...
And those aren't instant speed.
Fair enough.
So...
Although, no, there's one, but it's a mythic rare.
Right.
There's the horse when you...
No, that's end of turn.
Oh, is it end of turn?
Yep. So this is the only
enough.
instant speed token maker that we found in Hour of Devastation. Now, there are a couple from Amonkhet, so go and check those out, because that is going to be relevant for your pre-release. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to make sure that you remember what's on your opponent's board. We're not going to cover all of the things that are on-board tricks or tap abilities, but I wanted to highlight this one. There are a couple of other cards before we get into the instance also that I found interesting, such as Aan Reed Stalker. This is, of course, a creature with flash, and flash means that it can be cast at any time, as though it were instant. So this is something that can be flashed into block. If it blocks a bear, it's just going to kill that bear.
Yep.
Nothing more to say about that. And it is, of course, a flyer, so don't think you're safe in the air. Like Aan Reed Stalker, of course, is the possible rare Nimble Obstructionist. Now, this is a rare, so you're not going to come up against it too often, but it's another flyer with flash. It's a 3/1, so it would only trade in combat, but it does have an ability. When it cycles, which it can do for 3 mana, it can counter an activated or triggered ability. So it stifles something. And they get to draw a card. Very, very powerful effect if you're, say, embalming or eternalizing one of your creatures. This will counter that. It's like a counterspell in those instances.
Yeah.
So...
Unfortunately, it's not something you really want to play around, but it's good to know that it exists.
No, it's not something you want to play around, especially if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, I mean, it's going to be 1 card in their deck, so it's something to think about. But usually you wouldn't worry about a counterspell when you're, flashing back something from the eternalizing or embalming from the graveyard. But in this case, you might want to look out for it. While we're talking about cycling, I wanted to mention that cycling is at instant speed. So for all of those things in this set that care about things being cycled, such as Vile Manifestation, it gets +1/+0 for each card with cycling in your graveyard. So if they don't have any in their graveyard and then suddenly they cycle something, this becomes a 1/4 or a 2/4. So be careful with things like that. Make sure that you know what's on the battlefield that cares about cycling. If they have cards in hand and mana up, they may be thinking about cycling. So that's all I'm going to talk about with things on the battlefield. But now let's go on to the instance. First off, we have Act of Heroism. 1 and a white for an instant at common. Untap target creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn and can block an additional creature this turn. So this isn't just your average combat trick. It is a combat trick in that it can be used to buff the attacker and suddenly kill your blocker. But it can also be used on the defense to untap a surprise blocker.
Yeah, and this is one of the ones that I think people should, when playing against white, keep an eye out very carefully for, because it is at common.
Yep.
And it's really good.
Yeah, and 1 and a white often doesn't have this effect, so it's something to definitely be aware of. Next we have Jeru's Renunciation, another 1 and a white instant at common. It can tap up to 2 target creatures, and it has cycling for white. So while this isn't really useful in the middle of combat, it can be used to get blockers that you were hoping to that you were counting on out of the way. So it's something to be aware of in a race. If you think, all right, I'll leave back a guy or two to block and still get in for damage, this could be the difference in a race. Other than that, it's not really going to make much difference. It's very defensive. It's a kind of thing that white-blue decks tend to use to save themselves from taking damage for a turn while they get their control.
I would use this predominantly in a white-red aggro deck to be pushing through that early damage. You know, just get in.
Possibly. But there's not much you can do to defend against that, is what I'm saying.
Not at all.
But it's something to be aware of. Alright, moving on. We've got Gideons Defeat. This is, of course, a sideboard card because it only hits white creatures. But if you're in a white deck and you saw your opponent sideboard something in, or, hey, it's the pre-release, they may even be mainboarding it. Single white to exile target white creature that's attacking or blocking. And if it's a Gideon Planeswalker, well, this will take care of Gideon if you're lucky enough to have one. Again, not much you can do about this one. It's going to hit something if it's in the deck and you're playing white, but it's something to be aware of. Maybe if you're worried about it, leave your best attacker back and just make them use it.
Yeah, I don't see it seeing much play though, thankfully.
No, definitely not in game 1.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. All right. Sandblast. This is the premier removal in white. 2 and a white instant at common, again, deal 5 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. 5 should kill just about everything, so be very aware that these are coming from a white deck. They're common, and every white player should be playing every single one of them that they have.
Pretty much.
2 and a white, you know what to look out for. On to blue, we've got Counterveiling Winds, and I've decided to leave the split Aftermath cards to the end.
Okay.
Counterveiling Winds is 2 and a blue for an instant at common. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. So if your opponents have 0 cards in their graveyard, then this doesn't do anything. It does cycle though, so they may end up doing that. But later game, you want to be watching out for that counterspell. If they're holding up blue mana, you know, 3 and a, or 2 and a blue, it's always on your mind that they might have a counterspell, this is going to be one of the more effective in the late game. Next we have Imaginary Threats. 2 blue for an instant at uncommon. Creatures target opponent controls attack this turn if able. During that player's next untap step, they don't untap. So this is not really something that you're going to be able to play around, and honestly I don't think it's worth it, because I don't think this spell is that good. But your opponent can force you to attack with it, and that can leave you defenseless.
Yep.
What do you do about that?
I could see a case for if you're in blue something and the person you're playing against has a bunch of little things on their board that you can just eat all of, making them attack and just killing them all and then swinging back.
Yep.
So it could be something people sideboard in. It could be something they play.
It's not really something that you can plan against, though.
No.
But be aware. Next we have Jaces Defeat.
Oh, Jace.
This is, of course, another sideboard card. 1 and a blue, counter target blue spell. So if you're playing blue and you're playing against blue and you see your opponent sideboard something in, this could be it. For 1 and a blue, that's efficient counterspell mana. So it's something to be aware of. Of course, we do have Essence Scatter from Amonkhet, so you're already looking out for your creature spells.
Yeah, and you're much more likely to see that one than this one.
Yeah. But always be on the lookout. Supreme Will is next. 2 and a blue for an uncommon instant. Choose one. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. Or, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So, if they're holding up 2 and a blue early game, it's probably going to be for this. And if you don't cast something into it, they are probably just going to, what's it called? Impulse? Use the second ability. So they're going to get value out of it. It might be worth playing a lesser spell into this one and getting 1 for 1 and then playing your good spell next turn.
Which is generally the case against blue anyway when you suspect a counterspell.
Yep. Or you might just not bother playing around it, but it pays to be aware. Tragic Lesson is 2 and a blue for an instant at common. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you return a land you control to its owner's hand. So this is the thing that a blue deck will do if they're leaving up counter mana and you don't play anything. It's the kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't of blue. If they don't have a counter spell, then they're probably just going to use this, hold up the blue mana and then use this end of your turn to bluff a counter spell. So, I mean, if you've played something that it looks like they would have countered and they didn't, then you probably don't have to worry, because this is probably what they're holding on to. Next we have Unsummon, single blue instant, return target creature to its owner's hand. This is a common, and this is one of the favorite blue tempo spells. It will bounce a creature that costs way more mana than this does, so that you have to spend your turn replaying it. It'll bounce an attacker once you've attacked, so that they don't take damage, and you have to spend time recasting your thing. It will bounce a blocker, so that if you stack block, if you multi-block, they can bounce one and eat your other thing. So be aware of that. That's a possibility of being blown out.
And they can also bounce their own creature, so if you have gone to all the trouble of
using a removal spell, or
especially if you're in white and you use some sort of stasis snare type effect, they can just get it back. But at 1 blue, it's really, really hard to play around.
Yeah, you're probably going to see a lot of these, and they're, depending on the situation, they are easier or harder to play around, but you need to be aware of this one, absolutely. It's at common, it's very strong, and it's going to get played. On to black, we've got Torment of Venom. 2 black for an instant. Put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature. Its controller loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices another non-land permanent or discards a card. So the most important thing about this to remember is the 3 -1/-1 counters. This can be used to just outright kill something on your side of the board. It can be used to shrink something so it dies in combat. If you've got a big, mean, scary creature, suddenly maybe a 2/2 trades with it because they use this card. For 2 black, it is easy to read that they have it, and honestly, they might just cast it on their turn anyway to make sure it goes off, but it's something to be aware of. Next, we've got Without Weakness. 1 and a black for an instant at common. Target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. And it's got cycling for 2. But what we care about is this is a standard issue black combat trick. It gives a thing that you think is going to trade in combat indestructible. Or you lose a removal spell because their thing gets indestructible. Or, yeah, that's about it.
Yep.
But you might see some of these. I imagine they'll be played in sealed. For 1 and a black, it's what you got to look out for. Next, we're on to red with a braid. 1 and a red for an instant at uncommon. Choose 1. It deals 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. So this is a modal spell, and both modes are pretty good when they're good. 3 damage to target creature is always good, and then destroying your Edifice of Authority in response to a tap. Well, no, because the tap still goes off, but they could just kill an artifact that you are counting on.
Yeah.
More often, it's just going to be 3 damage to target creature.
I really like this card because it allows you to have on-board artifact removal without having to sideboard it in. So from game 1, if you're playing a really good artifact card and you're against red, you should be aware that it exists.
Blur of Blades is another instant removal spell. It's 1 and a red for a common. Put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. And then it deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. So it won't kill much, but it may make the difference in combat. You need to be aware of that. If you think that your creature is going to trade with theirs, maybe they get to keep theirs. If you think that you're making a safe block, maybe you're walking into a trade. It's a common, so I think they're probably going to get played.
Yeah, I think so.
There's a lot at 2 mana in red that you're going to have to be at least take note of. Another one, Chandra's Defeat, a single red, and again, this is probably a sideboard card, but because it's only good against red, but it is 5 damage, and that's a whole lot. That's going to kill basically any red thing I can think of, except for the big giant thing that I can't remember, but something to remember if they've sideboarded things in. Kindled Fury, single red for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. This is a lot like the black one, in that its chief use is winning combats. It's not that great, but it could make the difference. Open Fire, 2 and a red. Open Fire deals 3 damage to target creature or player. And it's common. At 3 mana, it's a little more telegraphed than the 2 mana uncommon, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be effective. So remember, there's lots of burn running around. And this goes to the face as well, so you might want to try to keep your life total above 3, even in a race. In green, we have Ambuscade, 2 and a green for an instant at common. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So this is a one-sided fight. is very, very good. +1/+0 means that you're looking at more damage than you expected, and the one-sided fight means that their creature doesn't even take the damage. So this is just a straight-up removal spell in green. Sure, they need a creature, but green usually has creatures, and for 3 mana, this could make the difference.
So, I recall when we were doing the set review on this card, both of us were kind of down on it because it's not as good as most fight cards. But what we missed, I mean, hey, you miss things when you're talking for 3 hours at a time, is that it is one-sided. It's not one of those fight cards that we were assuming it was, where you do damage to each other. You're just doing damage to the other creature, so this is actually really good.
Thanks for reminding me. It's too bad we didn't catch it at the time.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go and watch our set review or listen to it, ignore our rating on this, because this is actually really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Gift of Strength. 1 and a green for a common. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains reach until end of turn. Now, this doesn't untap the creature, so it isn't good on the defense as a surprise, but it's still fine on the defense if they've got a blocker up already. And actually, the reach means that your flyers have to beware. In green, if they've got 1 and a green up, they could just kill your big thing. And this targets their creature, not yours. So I'm thinking about the Sphinx from Amonkhet, that counters abilities.
Mm-hmm.
It could just slam into a creature wearing this and die.
Yeah.
Also, it's fine on the offense. 1 and a green is a little more expensive than we're used to for +3/+3, but it'll do the job.
Yep.
It'll absolutely punch through that damage. And a lot of things in green have trample, so beware. Life Goes On. Green for an instant at common. You gain 4 life. If a creature died this turn, you gain 8 life instead. This doesn't really need to be an instant, except that it can be cast in response to a lightning bolt or whatever. What was the open fire? So if you think you have your opponent dead, maybe you don't. Now, this isn't a good card, so it's probably not going to see a lot of play, but hey, pre-releases are where you see kooky things happen, so you might come up against this card. Alright, we're now on to the Aftermath cards. We don't care about the Aftermath on this one because it's sorcery speed, and honestly, all of the Aftermaths will be in their graveyard, so
they're not a surprise.
Yeah, you won't be surprised as long as you pay attention. But from the hand, farm 2 and a white, destroy target attacking or blocking creature. It's an uncommon, so it won't show up every time, but it'll show up often enough because people who open them will be playing them.
Yeah, it's just really good.
It's just straight up kill that. Consign is an uncommon in blue, 1 in a blue, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. That non-land permanent could be a creature. It could be an aura. It could be an artifact.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a planeswalker. So this is something to be aware of if you're targeting their mythic planeswalker with an open fire or something. Maybe they can bounce it to their hand. I mean, that's going to be really good for them, but usually this is going to be used to get a creature out of the way on either side, like we said earlier for Unsummon.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something to be aware of. Next we have Struggle. 2 and a red for an instant uncommon. Struggle deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. Thank goodness this doesn't hit players.
Yeah.
But it does hit creatures, and the later in the game this goes, the better that is. Can you imagine dealing 5, 6, 7 to a creature for 3 mana? That's what this can do.
Yeah. So this is like 5 fireball for creatures.
Kind of. Creature ball.
Creature ball.
Actually, there was a creature ball. I can't remember what it was, but that doesn't matter here. Just remember that these things are out there. Next, we have... Oh, the rares must have been last. Okay, so I apparently didn't order the set right, but we'll cover the rares now. Rares show up less often, of course, because they're rare than the commons and uncommons, but still something to be ready for when they do show up. Anyone who opens Hour of Glory is probably going to play it. 3 and a black, exile target creature. And that's all the text that you need to worry about. But 4 mana, exile any creature is pretty good. Mm-hmm. Again, this is probably going to happen just on their turn. They're probably not going to wait to get you in combat, but they could. So if they're holding up 4 mana, it's fairly likely this is what they have. Next, we have Leave. 1 and a white for an instant at rare. Return any number of target permanents you own to your hand. Be aware if you're targeting their stuff for removal, or if you're hoping to trade in combat. This could just be their
Hail Mary.
Hail Mary. Next we have Refuse. 3 and a red for a rare instant. Refuse deals damage to target spell's controller equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Now, I think we rated this as not that great in our set review, but it is a card that exists, and it's an exciting card, so it's going to get played. I don't see many ways for them to get you with it, unless you're casting, a 5-drop and you're at 5 life. But it's a card. The Aftermath also can happen at the same time once Refuse resolves, so they could copy your spell, and they could do that at instant speed. They have to have 7 mana, or it has to be in their bin, but there
We're
you go.
just here to report the cards.
And that's it for the instant speed effects from Hour of Devastation. So there aren't that many. You should be able to remember most of them, and the commons and uncommons are what you really need to be aware of. So if you want to go back and listen to or watch the Amonkhet version of this as well, because those cards are still going to be floating around, think about it as bumping them up a rarity slot. So if they're commons in Amonkhet, you're going to see them about the rate of uncommons in this set, because you only get 1 pack of that, or 2 in sealed. But they are still going to show up. So, yeah, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm just really excited to get going with the set.
So, thanks very much for watching this video. Please give it the old thumbs up. And if you're listening on the podcast, please give us the old 5-star on iTunes, and go and check out our other content. You'll find all sorts of interesting things from not only us, but Laura, co-host of the Knowledge Pool podcast. And yeah, have fun at your pre-releases.